Well, dude, Melker, I appreciate you coming on all the way from Sweden. What part of Sweden are you in?
Well, I'm from Gothenburg, which is on the west coast, and then on the summertime, I spend time here a little bit, even more further on the coast, actually. So that's where I'm at right now.
Right on. And for
Yeah.
those of us in America, most of my listeners are not in Sweden. What's the summer in Sweden like?
Well, every time someone asks me like when to come visit Sweden, I say June, July, or August, because those are the only months of the year where it's not dark, pretty much. It's a little bit exaggerated, but I mean, Swedish summer is probably my favorite time of the year anywhere on the planet, actually.
Yeah.
And then the other 9 months are pretty much like not very fun at all, actually.
Yeah.
So it's a big contrast. You know, in the summers we have the sun is out until like 11:30 p.m. and then in the winters it's like goes the sunset is at 2 p.m. So it's a very big contrast, and you get used to it after a while.
Yeah. I spent 10 days or so in Alaska when I was younger in the summer. Same deal. I think it was in July. It was absolutely beautiful. But I remember waking up like 3 o'clock in the morning one day, and I was like, wait, something's messed up here. Is the clock wrong or something? It was literally just that bright still, which is crazy. I mean, I actually wasn't even planning on bringing this up, but seasonal effectiveness disorder?
Yep.
Is that a thing that's heavily experienced in Sweden then?
I think so. I haven't read too much about it, like in relation to Sweden, but I mean, I can definitely feel it, and to some extent, I think everybody does. It's a lot easier to have good sleeping patterns in the winter. It's tough in the summer. Like in the summer months, I will almost never go to bed before midnight, because it's just that's how it works. But in the winter, I'm very diligent with like 10 p.m. every day. So
Yeah.
just how and I feel like my sleeping habits or need is actually a lot less in the summer too. So I don't I feel good. I feel fine. Get more sunlight and sleep less, but it works. So something is up there.
I think that's definitely intuitive. I think that's like a physiological response, because I think we're just all more vital in the summer. I think that's just how we're wired, especially in somebody in a environmental circumstance like yours. That makes a lot of sense, because the winter you have time to eat more, sleep more. It's less active, less energy usage. So you're kind of on that, like almost like a not hibernating, but like a bear almost. Like you're chilling, you're saving up the energy for the summer.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And also how, I mean, I feel like I crave different foods around different parts of the year. Like in the summer, I go for a lot more fruit and like honey and stuff like that. And in the winter, I like, bone broths and stuff like that I almost never crave now in the summer. So it's also interesting to see how that interplays during the seasons.
Sure. I think that's actually something worth exploring. I've heard some people talk about that, but I know like eating seasonal is very important. It can just send different signals to your body, right? Because your body's going to crave different things, like you just said, in different times of the year. But I mean, I wasn't even planning on talking on that, but that's a pretty cool insight in my opinion.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Melker from Sweden. I start every podcast the same. What's your story, man? How'd you get from where you were, however far back you want to go, to where you are now?
Yeah, I mean, where to start? I've been around in my life. Like I grew up in Brazil, actually. So I was born in Sweden, but I grew up in Brazil, lived there for a couple of years. Got really interested in like the multicultural, experiencing different cultures around the world. We always traveled a lot. My family, I never had the nicest clothes or anything like that, but we always focused on or prioritized to travel and see the world, and something I really appreciate. And now that I've gotten older. And then I've always played a lot of tennis, so pretty high level as a junior. Went on to play college tennis in the U.S. for 4 years, and then stayed in the U.S. to work in real estate. So that's where I started my career, pretty much. And then after that, had some failed startups of my own. Joined another startup that went really well, and then that's where the story kind of starts now, where we've started this company and everything. So it's been a long ride, but I think everything has its place. Everything is like a stepping stone to where you want to go. And I don't like I've learned so much from every single different thing that I've been through. So it's yeah, no regrets as you say.
Very American reference there. That's pretty funny. Real tennis, man. Where'd you play college tennis?
In Baltimore, actually. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah. So I played college baseball at Virginia Tech. So
Oh, cool.
a lot of my friends are actually from that Maryland, Baltimore, DC
Yeah,
area. Very cool, man.
I've played at Virginia Tech quite a lot, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Almost every year during my college years, we went to play
Dude.
like regional tournaments there and stuff. So I know it well.
Blacksburg, Virginia, man. It's a good little town.
Yeah, it's a great I mean, it's a great drive from Baltimore. It's like 5 hours of road. Looks exactly the same. So
I believe that. Yeah. And then real estate, dude. That's interesting. I didn't know that as well, because that's what my undergrad and then graduate certificate were in. And me and my brother are actually in the process of trying to get some investment properties right now. What's the background with that?
Cool. Yeah. I mean, I think even when I was young, I was dreamed of the United States. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. We have this summer house here, of course, on the west coast of Sweden, which I enjoy so much now. But when I was young, even like 10 years old, I would tell my parents like, oh, yeah, you can keep this house when you're older, because I'm going to be in Los Angeles. That's what I used to say. And so I think I always had this dream of like US, Los Angeles, New York. And when I was in college, it kind of just clicked for me. And I was like, the Swedish guy, his name is Frederick Eklund. He worked as a real estate agent in New York City. It was super successful. I had this great aura. I looked up to him a lot. Still do. And I just said, why don't I try it? Why can't I do it? And so I took a couple of courses, like besides my college studies, and got my license in New York. Networked my way in there somehow, and stayed there until my visa ran out, pretty much. So
wow.
It was during the time when Trump was elected, and right at that time he actually paused like the working visas that I had to apply for. So it was kind of hard to stay at that time. So I had to kind of move back, and took me other places. So not too I'm happy about it now. So yeah, it was a good experience.
That ties into what you said earlier about like no regrets, kind of, and how everything's a stepping stone.
Yeah,
that's another example. Like maybe at the time you're like, dang, I want to stay, I want to do this, but as you just mentioned, you're here now, you're doing the things that you want to do. Yeah, but
just to expand on that, I think because a big thing for me has always been to find meaning in what I do, and to like leave a legacy and try to do good for the world. And I think the only thing with the real estate thing that was bugging me was that I felt like I was walking on the streets, and I was thinking, I remember this vividly. I was walking on Fifth Avenue. I was thinking, I mean, if a bus would run over me right now, someone else would just take my job tomorrow and no one would remember me, right? And at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, it's fun to see cool properties. You can, meet a lot of cool people, but I'm just helping one family move to a new apartment. Someone else could do that, And I think ever since that moment, I've been trying to search for something bigger than just myself and my own career, but leaving something behind that is it's actually doing good for the world. And I think that can all obviously be combined with creating passive incomes and with investment properties, which I'm also doing here in Sweden. So it's not about that, but I think it's the bigger mission to find something that I'm truly passionate about and want to do good for others.
That's fascinating to me, because I remember this vividly. It was 2 days ago. I was literally laying in the sun, and I started, because I like to view my life as like different buckets. Like I've got like different buckets I'm expending energy into. And the real estate, I kind of like try to break down. I'm like, okay, well, why am I doing this? And it really, on a very surface and kind of shallow level, it's to create income. Like, because I said the same thing to myself. I'm like, wait, so if I buy this property, I'm not impacting the people that live there. Like, I'm never going to talk to them. I'm not doing good by them. In fact, I'm probably going to try to increase rents, because that's the nature of making money in that game. So it's interesting that I had that like a very similar sort of realization. And that's not to like say that real estate's bad, because somebody's going to own the building, right? And the person who owns the building is going to make money. So
course,
It's necessary.
there's nothing wrong with making money, because you need it
Yep.
to be able to realize your dreams. So sometimes, that can fund another project, or help you realize something else that were actually the bigger purpose. As I said before,
Yeah.
like everything is just a stepping stone, right? So all the bad experiences will lead to something better. I believe so.
What do you think helped you in times of, because I'm sure that you've had them, in the times where you didn't necessarily have that hindsight, where you're like, you know what, this is going to be a stepping stone, more of like the difficult, in the midst of the fire where it's like, oh, this is not going how I wanted it or planned. What kind of helped you proceed through that? Because it's easy with hindsight to go,
Yeah.
like, oh, this is a stepping stone, but in the moment it can be very difficult.
Yeah, everybody's a genius in hindsight, right? But it's a good question. I think I've definitely had rough patches. I mean, even when I was in New York doing my real estate gig and I wasn't happy with it, I was walking around, oh, like, what am I going to do with my life? I don't know what my next thing is. Am I going to use what I studied in college, or am I just going to, do something else? So that was definitely tough. And I think, but with every experience, I felt like I learned that it was a stepping stone. So it was almost like I was training my mindset during this thing, right? So, and then at one point I got super interested in, like, I read every single personal development book on the face of the earth. So, and I learned this, like, one thing that I carried with me ever since, and that's this: to train, like, my mindset to every time something bad happens, I try to list 3 positive things, like, in relation to that bad thing that happened. And it sounds a little silly, a little cheesy, but it's actually helped me quite a lot, in like the smallest setbacks. If like, for example, now with our latest shoe delivery, it's been delayed a month on the boat. It's like, nothing I can do really. So, and I could either choose to be, like, super frustrated about it and just sit and be mad about it, or, which I did, I was trying to say, like, hey, what are some good things about this? Like, one, I can communicate with customers, build a deeper relationship with them. We have more time to produce marketing material, and you just can keep going and keep going. So it's yeah, I think that's a big thing, to just try to shift everything to positive. And then when that unfortunate thing happens in the future, I feel like I'll be better prepared to be able to look at it from a hindsight perspective, but, like, maybe right away, actually.
Yeah. It kind of,
If that makes sense.
it lessens the drag, like it lessens
Yeah.
the lag or the drag from that realization. Cause you can almost, like you just mentioned, you can almost make it where you don't have the full picture obviously in the moment, but you can almost make it where you're flipping that perspective in the moment, which is very, very cool and very powerful. I actually really like that. I've never heard anybody talk about just trying to find 3 positives of every, like, almost as a habitual thing. Like, oh, this thing's going bad. Okay, let's think of 3 positives.
Yeah, just every time,
Very
even
cool.
with the smallest things, right? Like, the bus is late. Oh well, like, I get 3 extra minutes of sunlight. Like, I can call I can call my mom, which I didn't have time for yesterday. You can always find things that just makes life better, in the moment. So I think simple things like that, as I said, they can sound a little cheesy, like it's just a little gimmick, but I think they can be quite profound when you do it habitually, like you said.
Absolutely. And sort of to tie back to that whole real estate discussion and finding meaning, you said you went from real estate to a startup.
Yeah, so I actually moved back from New York to Sweden, and at that time I was really lost, I would say. I was lost on many different levels. Like, I was, I'd broken up with my girlfriend. I was experimenting with diets. Like, I went vegan back then. That was terrible. And I didn't know what I was going to do career-wise. So it was a lot of things at once that I was trying to find my way in life, I think. And me and my friend, we actually started a business, that we were selling, like basic business, first business, you do like t-shirt business. So we did a t-shirt business that we were selling like vegan concepts on it, which was I'm even a little bit embarrassed talking about it now, because when I look back at like the materials that we produced and like our old Instagram and like what we would say to each other, what we would do, like I feel a little embarrassed about it, but again,
Yeah.
I learned from it, and we laugh about it today, so, both of us. So It's
There's a quote that I've mentioned it before on the podcast. If you don't think yourself 3 years ago was an idiot, then you're still an idiot. Because
yeah,
like,
yeah.
dude, we all have those things that we're like, what in the hell was I thinking, man?
I know. Yeah, I mean, even looking back at like Instagram posts from 3 years ago, or you can just, I feel a deep level of shame and cringe. But I guess as you said, it's just a part of the journey. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Now you have that perspective. So you went to a startup, and in that, I actually think it makes a lot of sense given your perspective on like the real estate, because startups are more growth oriented. They're more like you're in the weeds, which is a lot more meaningful in my opinion than a company that's already here and they don't really need you. Like they can replace you. When you're in a startup, you're from the ground up. You have, in many cases, irreplaceable knowledge and insight into the actual product or whatever you're doing. So that makes a lot of sense. And you've mentioned the shoes. Wide, man. What's going on with Wide Footwear?
Yeah, I mean, it actually started. Well, it started a long time ago, but the actual journey started 2 years ago. So I mean, as I said, I've always been a tennis player. I've worn, all kinds of different tennis shoes and always had pain from those. But when I think back, I never really reflected on why I had pain. I thought it was normal to just break in a shoe for 3 weeks and then it feels good for a month and then you get a new one because it breaks. And then you start that cycle over, and because you would just assume that the big brands that they're creating, of course, the best possible shoes for your foot. Why would they do anything else, right? They have all that money. They have, I never questioned it really. Then a couple of years ago, I think it was early 2021, I saw this Instagram post from this page called Squat University, and he was talking about barefoot shoes and some foot exercises. And I saw it was from this page called My Foot Function. And I clicked through the page and I contacted them and I said, this is interesting. I want to have a consultation. And during that period, I ordered like a bunch of the big brands, barefoot shoe brands. And I was using them for a while, and then I had my consultation. And then at the end of it, I asked him, I was like, so what shoe brand would you recommend me? Because you've obviously tried all of them. So, and we had pretty similar feet and like width and everything. And he basically couldn't answer me. He was like, I don't really want to, I could sense that he didn't think anything was optimal on the market. And that's what I had felt too when I tested all the bigger brands. Cause they felt nicer than my, big brand. I don't want to name brands, but big brand shoes. But it was still something off, I felt, in terms of making it perfect. So, yeah, I mean, I went home here we were sitting out here on the porch, and I was talking to my brother, and we basically just said, look, why don't we just try to make something that we think is perfect? And my brother was like, well, yeah, I mean, that would be awesome, but how would we even do that? I mean, how do you make a shoe? We don't have like a machine to make, and I had been in startups for a couple of years by then. So I knew a little bit about manufacturing processes and stuff. And I just said, look, if we can come up with a drawing and we can come up with the functionalities of the shoe that we wanted, then I can make it happen. Like I will make it happen. So we started drawing literally like 5 meters away from here where I'm sitting right now. And it took 2 years of development to get it where we're at right now. A little bit more than now because we've been selling for 3 months, but, it's just, it's been a tough journey because it's very difficult to make a shoe. I'm happy I was a little bit naive back then. It's a lot. I think it's definitely the hardest piece of clothing that you can make, and to make it well as well. But I'm happy with the result, and I'm happy where we're headed to. So,
very cool, dude. That's awesome, and I love hearing like the 2-year thing. That's like I myself get caught up in this in terms of like instant. I want it now. I want it in 2 months. I want it like, dude. Sometimes, especially those things that are worth the wait, take a long time. So I think that's so cool. And I definitely see, I've never thought about that, but like in terms of shoe manufacturing, there's so many more pieces that go into it than most other pieces of clothing. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
So
I
is
mean,
it
if
you and
you
your brother who own the company, or who?
yes, and then we
Very
have
cool.
another two guys, which is not official yet. So
Very cool.
who are invested in the company now. But yeah, I mean, if you're making a shirt, for example, all you need is two pieces of fabric. You sew them together, and you have a shirt. I mean, that's it.
Hmm.
But if you make a shoe, it's you need to have a sole and an upper, and then those need to interplay with each other. And there's different materials on the sole for the walking experience, different densities. Uh, it's and every size needs its own aluminum mold, and it's a whole science to make it work actually. So I think for us, one of the biggest differentiators I think that our customers feels with us compared to other brands is that we actually added a little bit more cushioning on the sole, because we felt that when I was, for example, trying like maybe 7 or 8 brands before this, I felt like they were all very, very thin, which is nice sometimes. But when you're walking for like 90 minutes, or if you're walking in cities and unnatural surfaces, it's not always that nice for knees and hips and ankles after a while. So we said, why don't we make it a little bit thicker? Not a lot, but like if a normal one, standard barefoot shoe is maybe 4 millimeters thick, like super thin, right? And then we said, okay, let's do 13. Um, but we said we won't compromise on the bend. It needs to work as good as the existing ones. So I think that's where we're really happy with the result, that we actually got a shoe that you can walk for a long time, feel the ground very, very well, but you don't have to worry about stepping on a small rock and hurt your foot. So that's a little bit where we are going with it, and it'll be even more apparent with like the coming models that we will release. So I actually don't really like the term barefoot shoe. We don't call ourselves a barefoot shoe brand. We call ourselves a functional footwear brand, because we think that like barefoot shoe, for me, that implies that being barefoot is always the best, and we disagree with that. We think that we live in a society where there's a lot of unnatural surfaces, as I mentioned. So walking barefoot on them for a lot of people would hurt. It would not be good for
Hmm.
their hips, would not be good for their knees, especially not after walking 25 to 50, 70 years in like a super, super cushioned, shoe. So I think the idea is great with barefoot shoes, but I think we also need something in the middle where we can address the maybe more important things as we see it.
Yeah, a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool. I like the idea of a little bit thicker. I'll tell you this. I have a pair of Barefoot, big brand Barefoot. I think this happens with a lot of things in life. It's just a process, and like you said, a stepping stone. So I used to wear big brand shoes like that they gave me for school, for
Yep.
athletics. Even ones that I thought were a little bit more like avant-garde. Oh, these are like better than the big brands. They're really just the exact same. And then I said, you know what? Let me see these barefoot shoes. Let me just see what they're about. And I can tell you this with confidence. I will never go back to a regular big brand shoe ever in my life. My feet feel better. My balance is better. My ankles, my hips, my knees, they all feel better. But I will tell you, there's a little like rocky path that I run on sometimes, and the shoes are thin, and I actually have that issue where I have to like prance around the rocks, because if I hit a rock smack dab, like, and these are actually trail shoes,
Yeah.
it'll like serious impact on my foot, which is not very comfortable. And I also agree with you that it's for somebody that's 50 years old whose movement patterns have been adapted to walking on concrete or unnatural surfaces for 50 years, maybe not over the long term, like maybe they have time in their life to get to like a more barefoot, but in the interim or for at least the foreseeable future, it's probably not good to go from 100 to 0. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And I think that's a big thing. And I think there's a problem with, if you look at a shoe, let's just take one of the big brands, most famous shoes, right? They'll have a little bit of a drop. So that means that there's a higher at the heel and lower at the front foot. They will have a pretty thin pointy toe box. They will be quite stiff in the sole, so you won't be able to bend them very much. And there will often be a little, what we call a toe spring, which is that there's a little curvature up again at the toes. So it'll be downhill slope and then go up a little bit again. So all these things, right? First of all, toes are being pushed together. Second of all, your big toe won't bend anything when you're walking because the sole is too stiff. And you will be standing in a downhill slope all the time, pretty much putting pressure on the forefoot. And then on top of that, you'll also have the toe spring, as I mentioned, where the toes will go up a little bit again, putting them in a completely unnatural position, putting also pressure on the plantar fascia under the foot, right? So these are 4 quite big, major issues in a conventional shoe. And I think the problem with some barefoot shoes, like you also mentioned, is that you try to tackle all of them at once, right? So you say, okay, we're going to have 0 drop. I agree with that. That's good. You're going to have a wide toe box. I agree with that too. That's good. And I agree with no toe spring, although I would say maybe 40 to 50% of barefoot shoes actually don't have a toe spring. A lot of them do. And then the last thing would be, the bendability of the sole, right? Which I also think is good. But I don't think that that it actually needs to bend like completely as a ball, because that's not really how the foot moves either. What's important for the foot is that you can bend at the big toe, because that's how the walking gait works. And then it's the sole thickness, right? So if you take someone thick sole and all these different characteristics and you put them in a barefoot shoe, like a lot of times they'll get injured. So from our perspective, we say, okay, it's all great, but the most important thing is, like, let's just start by putting the big toe in its right position, because if the big toe is in its correct position and you train the foot to that, then you will have a much less deformed foot over time. And that's a huge problem if you do have a deformed foot, because even just putting the big toe out of position for a while, your balance will be impacted, and that's like the number 1 cause of death for old people, right? Losing their balance and breaking a hip or something, and they die, right? So just addressing like that one thing is worth it. Now we're doing more than just the toe box. We're doing always like 0 drop and everything, but I think that's where we come in with the sole thickness. So you're in the future, you'll see us drop a running shoe with a thicker sole, but all the other characteristics are there. So you can pretty much walk in it and have no restrictions on your feet, but it won't be that 4 millimeter hurting your foot on a rock type of thing. Yeah. So that makes sense. It's just it
does.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with that. And I really do think that there's a place in the market for it. And I'm excited for y'all. I have several questions on that. Are you familiar with like American baseball, the MLB?
Yeah.
Do you know who Ichiro Suzuki is?
No, not that well.
He's like one of the best Japanese players ever in the MLB. Like I think he has 3,000 hits. He's just if you know MLB baseball, you know who Ichiro Suzuki is. In America and Japan at least. And the rumor has it for me because I would always try to find, I'm sure you're the same in tennis, I would always try to find like just little ways to make me better at baseball. Like that's kind of how my health journey started, and I want to touch on yours later. But I was always trying to find little ways to impact my training where I could get more mobility, et cetera, et cetera. And I heard that Ichiro did 45-minute like a foot routine every day. And the reason that's important is because he played for a long time. His career was like he played at a very high level for a very long time. And he was a very healthy player overall. And I'm like, this dude spends 45 minutes on his feet. So I started looking into it, and I have told people this, and I've thought it myself for a long time. The physical body's health starts with your feet, I think, because then it goes from your feet to your ankles, to your knees, to your hips, to your spine. And then if you have a bad spine, good luck. But it starts with your feet, and people have these imbalances, some of the mobility of some of my friends in their feet, like their dorsiflexion stuff. It's like, it's crazy. Yeah. And to try to go from what they've been doing for 20 years with horrible mobility, horrible balance, horrible muscular imbalances, to try to go like right to barefoot seems a little bit out of place to me as well.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and I think we're also open with that. I think it's better than nothing to just, you could buy a pair of wides or whatever, and you could just walk in them, maybe put on some toe spacers inside the shoe, which where we recommend to do sometimes. But I also think, when you've done a pattern for 10, 20, 30, 50 years, you also have to do exercises, and that's something that we actually very much recommend people doing. Because it's a shoe is going to help you a lot, but it's not going to do all of the work. This is like decades learned behavior that you need to unlearn. And your foot is used to being in a small prison, like we like to say.
Foot prisons.
Foot prisons. But I think, like you said, if he spends 45 minutes a day, that's impressive. He's of course a pro athlete, and a lot of people won't do that. But even just doing 10 minutes a day will do a massive difference. Or 10 minutes 3 times a week, will compound over the years.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that brings up, is that a resource that y'all have available on your website or anything like that with different exercises that people could do, or maybe in the future that's something y'all could?
We're working on how to incorporate it. So we actually we have a free service to all our customers where they can email our physio team, and we do give them free guidance pretty much if there's something major that they can work on. Some people send pictures of their feet and they will analyze it and stuff. So that's nice. But I think in the future we will probably have something available too on the website, or if one of our partners maybe we collaborate with them to do something. Yeah.
Very cool. No, that'd be really cool for somebody to be able to buy a shoe and then understand how to maximize their physiology for the shoe and vice versa. That's very cool.
Yeah.
How's selling going? You said you guys started 3 months ago. Is that correct?
Yeah. We launched, it's 1st of August. We launched in middle of May, actually, and we sold out in 3 days, which was amazing. Cool. And then we had this second batch on its way pretty much, and that arrived to Sweden 2 days ago. So we've been selling on pre-order, and that will start shipping out next week. So it's been a super fun journey so far. Selling good, people like it, good reviews. You can't ask for more than that. Yeah.
Are they available in America or only?
We actually had we were available in America for the first batch, but then we had to pause US shipping for now because the shipping prices are insane, and I don't really like to charge that much for shipping. Like for example, in Europe, we do free shipping, and we take on that cost because it's quite cheap to ship within Europe right now. But over the Atlantic is like 5 times the cost, which works for one. If we just sell one and that's fine. But when you start incorporating returns and size exchanges and all that thing, it's quite unsustainable. Actually, we would actually lose money on doing that. So it's just kind of difficult to do right now. But we are setting up a warehouse in the US. So later this year, I hope, or early next, we will have national 2-day shipping across the US.
Very cool.
That's something that we're working on.
That's exciting, yeah, because I'm definitely trying to get my hands on a pair. I'm coming to Europe in September and October this year, so maybe I'll be in like Portugal and Spain, but maybe if I stay long enough in a place, then I'll order.
Yeah, we'll hook you up. We'll hook you up.
Bring them back to the Americas. But dude, I think that's so cool. I'm in the process of starting a business product myself, and it's my first one, so I draw a lot of inspiration from just the journey that you've had thus far up to that point, and also the knowledge that you've gained in, I don't know if you were always this knowledgeable in shoes, but it seems like you've really dove into it.
Yeah, no. My learning curve started 2 years ago, really, when I had that first meeting with them. And then, but of course, I've felt foot pain my whole life. On the tennis court, and then I've every time I love to go ski. My family has always gone skiing, but I've always been the guy who's like, I'll ski for half the day. and then I'll go chill at the hotel because feet hurt,
Yeah.
And then I remember one time, which is actually maybe like the most profound foot experience that I've had. So when I went to my first interview in New York for my real estate job, I had to take the bus from Baltimore in the morning at 5 a.m. and then come back at night at like 8 p.m. or something. So I would arrive back with the bus at like 11 p.m. And I put on these dress shoes that I hadn't worn for like maybe 2 years or something like that. And my feet were hurting so bad the whole day. I couldn't enjoy it past like 10 a.m. in the morning. And then when I sat down on the bus going back home to Baltimore, I took my shoes off. And that was actually a big mistake because that's when my feet started hurting even more because they were like coming back to life and like blood was starting to flow within. So that was 3 hours of pain actually. And from that day, I actually told myself I'm never wearing dress shoes again. Which I am actually not sure I've honored. I've probably done it once or twice for a wedding, but now I'm more like, okay, let's make those shoes, but let's make them well, and let's have a wide version for them. So that's my mission.
Dude, that's the story of entrepreneurship is a problem that you have in creating the solution, because the odds are that people have had that problem. I've had that exact same problem. I never wear barefoot or regular shoes anymore.
Yeah.
Go to a wedding, go to like some nice event, and you're like, oh my gosh, the toe boxes are like this. It's
horrible. Awful. And when you think about the history regarding that, I don't know if you know, but like why shoes even look like that. But it's because it's a whole history about it. But I'll tell you the most profound thing. So in the Industrial Revolution, they wanted to start to mass produce shoes, and they wanted to make a lot of money quickly, right? So someone said pretty much like, why don't we just make one symmetrical sole that can fit both feet, right? And of course, the problem is that the feet are not symmetrical; they're asymmetrical. You have one left foot and one right foot for a reason. They look different, and of course, if you put them into a pointy, symmetrical shape, your toes are going to get messed up. And that, of course, got cemented in society. That became fashion. So I think my theory is that the big brands knows this, but it's too much money involved that they can't do anything about it. And I think I'm actually a little bit. I think some barefoot shoe brands are going towards that route as well. Budging on some things to make more money or sell more shoes. Because I think a lot of barefoot shoe brands are actually way too narrow and way too, not functional. So this is something that we should put on the wall in our office, that we said function first always and no compromise. So no matter what shoe we make, we'll always make sure that feet are not being compromised in any way. So that's very important to us.
Very cool. That brings up a question I was going to bring up earlier, in terms of it's actually about questioning. It's one of those things that can be carried over to like everything in health. Pretty much everything in life is questioning things. And when I started wearing barefoot shoes, or like even started questioning, seeing people online or on Instagram, on Twitter, wear different shoes, I was like, I started questioning. But it's amazing to me how it took me 24 years for me to even think about what I was putting in my feet every single day. And so it's just one of those things that it's so ingrained in society, because one company back in like 1900 decided, you know what, we're going to make shoes this way.
Yeah.
And then that became the cool shoe. And now we're 120 years later or whatever, still wearing pointy shoes with our feet getting discombobulated. It's very, very odd, but it's very important. It's a very important lesson to start questioning things.
Yeah, I think, and that's something that we try to do every day. Actually, I encourage the team to question everything that we do, and to challenge whenever I say something or they say something. We try to challenge, and because the goal is to get to the best possible outcome. So we had this discussion a couple of weeks ago, which I thought was great. We were talking about logo positioning, like small thing like that, and the team wasn't in agreement. Where to put it or how to put it, or in any of it. But we all made our case, and we all questioned each other's presentation, and we came up with a solution that everybody's happy with. And I think that's a sign of a healthy team. And so it's like a culture that I want to have, that we can do that to each other all the time, actually,
Cool.
no matter what it's about.
So tennis in college is more team oriented than in the pros, correct?
Yep, exactly.
So is that something that you've drawn from the experience in terms of like a tight knit sporting team, culture, community, like just the team environment? Is that something you've drawn from to bring into your company?
Yeah, I think, if you think about it from my perspective, it's a little bit weird that I've actually played tennis, because I'm a much bigger fan of team sports. I've always thrived in that environment, and I've always liked taking the lead. Like I became captain of my tennis team in college as a second semester freshman. So I've always been doing that, and I love a team environment. And I don't know if that came super natural to me, but I just I wanted to be that, and I worked on it, and yeah. So but I think it's very important to have a functioning team. I think about this almost every day, that everything that we do, everything that we produce, even like the upcoming shoes that we have planned that will start production pretty soon, like I could have never gotten to that end result myself. Never. And no one in the team could have done it by themselves. So I think that, so we're four people right now, and I truly believe that like 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 = 10. If you do it right. And I really believe that the value of the team is much greater than the sum of its parts. So it's something that we try to incorporate every single day, actually.
Very cool. I entirely agree. That's in every team environment ever. It really is like greater than just the each sum. Like you said, like I add 2, you add 2, whatever, it's exponential. Because something about that, I don't know exactly what it is. Maybe it's like a human thing that we've kind of just evolved and adapted to, but it's very cool to see a team kind of not rise to the occasion, but exceed their cumulative limits, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think for me, it's also about, if you think about history and different inventions, how inventions build on each other, right? Someone invented the electricity, which is paved the way for every single invention since. And I think it's kind of the same thing in a team, right? Like one person says one comment, another one that sparks a thought in another one of us, and then at the end of it, it's been like maybe 100 new thoughts because of this one comment. So I think if you do it well, and if you have a functioning team, you can never beat that alone, ever. I couldn't do it, at least. So maybe someone is smarter than me and could do it, but I couldn't do it.
Yeah, I'm not that guy. So I saw a tweet recently where it was just like, basically, I can't remember the exact verbiage, but it was talking about how if you try to get rich alone, like good luck, essentially. Yeah. If you try to create something very cool or create a legacy alone, good luck. And also it's like, that. What's the point, dude? I don't know. I would much rather be with my community, with my tribe, and all of us like move the needle than just me be a lone wolf. That's not really how I operate, and I don't think that's optimal.
No, I totally agree. I actually, one of my favorite things is to see my friends succeed, and I think that's the type of people that you want to have around you too. People that succeed and people that are happy for you and actually cheer you on and want you to do well and do well things. So for me, it's you can sense that sometimes people don't really want your best, and that's those other kind of people that I don't really like to associate with anymore. But it's a natural selection, I guess.
Exactly. It's just a projection in that sense of a world of scarcity as opposed to abundance. Everybody, like, one of the most gratifying things in terms of friendship is sharing a win with a friend and then seeing that friend be like almost as ecstatic as you. It's almost like greater than the gratification, because you're like, wow, this person actually cares for me. And then on the flip side, it's like you tell somebody something really cool and you can tell that they're like, oh yeah, but like good, this isn't going to last, or like good luck, it's definitely tangible. You can feel it.
Yeah, totally. I'm 100% with you.
The comment you made earlier about mission, and we spoke on it a little bit about like trying to find your mission, and you went to startups because that's a little bit more mission oriented, and obviously now having your own startup and seeing it really get off the ground, which is very cool. Having a team. What is y'all's mission? Like what's your mission with Wide?
Yeah, so I think the mission with Wide is bigger than just Wide for me. Like for me, if in 50 years we have helped shape the future of what footwear should look like, then that's a success. I would love to see a world where there's hundreds of brands like Wide doing that same thing, and like expanding on making, challenging each other to make better products and serving the customers as best as possible. So my goal is not for every single person in the world to wear a pair of Wides. So our goal is more to have a like societal impact to help society. Because if I think about my own kids one day, I want them to grow up in a world where they don't go through the same things as you and I have, walking in terrible shoes their whole life and then having a wake-up call when they're 24, 25 years old. Of course, I hope my kids will wear Wide shoes, but I think it's more of like a bigger thing for us, which is also why we're conducting a clinical study later this year, where we'll be studying like over 1,000 people to make the largest ever clinical study on the shoes effect on feet. So I think that speaks a little bit to like the mission is bigger than just selling the most amount of shoes. We want to make impact, and I think I'll add one thing to that. Sorry for rambling on, but
No, you're good.
We like the other three people in the company, they are very, they're physiotherapists, they are sports scientists, they're very into that. And I'm also very interested in that. But I think also more like, how can we make these shoes so that the next generation think they're the coolest thing ever? Because there's sometimes a disconnect, right, between what we think is like, okay, this is a cool barefoot shoe or functional shoe or whatever you want to call it. But then there's the Nike Air Forces and the Adidas Yeezys and everything. So they will still think that's cooler, right? So my challenge is, okay, how do we make something that's on the same level of cool or even cooler? Because I love what Elon Musk said one day, this back in the day. He was saying how like we can't just make the best electric car, like we have to make the best car. And I want to apply that same mindset a little bit. That like we don't want to make the best barefoot shoe or the best functional footwear shoe. Like we have to try to make the best shoe, And then if we succeed, that's great. Maybe we aim for the stars, land on the treetops, But it's I think that's more the mission that I walk around with every day, thinking about solutions. Like how can we make this next model so that a 15-year-old thinks it's like, oh, this is cool shoe I've ever seen in my life. So very cool.
So are you familiar with the company Yeti?
Yeti, I've heard of it, but I don't.
They have one of the most fascinating stories, in my opinion, of like any business I've heard of. And when I was in graduate school, I had like a marketing class that I had to take that I didn't really care about, but my final project was on a company that I got to choose and dissect their marketing strategy. And I chose Yeti because it was two brothers that founded it. It was necessity driven. So they both graduated college and started two different companies, each of them. And then basically they made boats. They made fishing boats in Texas. And these boats had these coolers that they would put in, and these coolers always broke. And so what they did was they built their own, sort of like him and his brother literally talked. They're like, wait a second, you should really look into their story.
Yeah,
I'll send you some info on them. It's fascinating. And being a brother myself and wanting to do business with my brother, it sounds like you guys are similar. They basically made their own cooler. It's like the most durable cooler. It can keep ice for like 4 or 5 days. It's the best cooler there is. It's simply put. And what they did was, and the reason this actually ties into what you're saying is, they didn't want to make the best like fishing boat cooler. They didn't want to make the best specific ice. They wanted to make the best cooler, like period, most durable, best ice retention, all these things. And what they did to make it seem cool is they basically found all the coolest people in the world, like all the coolest influencers. So like famous hunters in America, famous athletes, famous musicians, like country artists and all these people. And they let them tell the story because they believed in their product so much. So they would just, hey, you want to be a Yeti ambassador? You're a pro surfer. Go tell the story, bro. Here's some Yeti stuff and you just go do it. And so what happened is it became way bigger than the cooler, just like you're saying in the shoe. Yeah. Now it's a lifestyle brand. It's $1 billion plus. I think they did $1 billion in revenue last year.
Yeah, it's insane.
From a cooler. Yeah, and so now they have, and it's crazy to me to think about because you think that's a cooler. Like that's like, how often do you use a cooler? Maybe once a week.
Right. Yeah.
Now they have $1 billion plus in revenue. They're every single place in America. Everybody uses them. I don't know if they're international, but it's just a fascinating story about becoming bigger than the product.
Yeah.
By number one, believing in it, and then number two, using ambassadorship and letting the customers and the people that use your products tell the story in your products instead of you trying to be like, or me trying to be like, here's my product, here's why it's good. It's believing in it, giving it to somebody, and then letting them tell it. And so that's a long-winded tangent, but yeah, I figured I'd share.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'll definitely look into that.
Very, very cool. I just find them absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
And then in terms of, it sounds like that's what y'all are trying to do, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the goal. And I think, I'm not sitting here saying Wide will become the biggest shoe brand in the world, but I'm saying it would be foolish not to try, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that we have something unique coming, and we have because I've honestly never been interested in just making another shoe brand, you know, one in the mix that doesn't stand out. So I think maybe a little bit so far, but definitely with the next couple of models, you'll really see where we're going with it and what kind of statement we want to make in the industry.
Very cool.
Very excited about that.
I think that's so cool. I'm excited to get my hands on a pair.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah. We touched on it earlier in terms of like health journey.
Yeah.
And obviously you're an athlete, and Wide Footwear is, I don't know what you would consider, but to me, it has that perception of being like a health company, something that's centered around making you and your body feel better. What's your health journey? Like, how did you kind of get into this type of thing?
Yeah. So I've maybe since like 10th or 11th grade been interested in health. It started with my family. We bought a water filtration system. And I remember it was one of these water machines called Kangen, if you've heard of it. And you can like choose the pH value on it. So what we did was I put it at acidic, and we poured it over some cherry tomatoes. And after like 10 minutes, the water was yellow. So all the pesticides from the tomatoes had, you know, come off and was now in the water. And we were like, whoa, that's crazy. So after that day, you know, I've pretty much never bought anything that's not organic when I've gone to the shop myself. And I think that's pretty much where it started. And then I've always been interested in, like, when I become interested in something, I want to learn like everything about it. And for the longest time, I thought that veganism was the best thing. I mean, I feel a little bit betrayed now in hindsight. But I truly thought it was the way to live. I remember I was following these like raw vegan influencers, and I thought they were like so cool. They were just eating like nuts and fruits and greens and all these kinds of things, you know, seaweed and whatever. And so I tried that. I always said that I would try it one time. So I started it, I think it was 2018 on New Year's Day, first day of the year. And I said I was going to do 1 month. And I kept going. I thought I felt better, but I was like deteriorating quite rapidly. I developed some white patches. I lost some, like my hair was falling out a little bit, and I got really skinny, really weak. I was never muscular before, but I got even skinnier. And I think that's kind of where it shifted to me, you know. And it's actually my old startup job that made me quit it. So because I was going to South Korea for a business trip, and everybody at the office, they didn't know. Some of them didn't know that I was vegan. So they were telling me, "Oh, you got to try the Korean barbecue. You're gonna love it." And at that time, I was pretty fed up with the vegan diet. So I went home that night and I bought a piece of ribeye on my way home because I was leaving on the flight the day after. I was like, I got to try it first because I don't know if maybe I'll puke or like, I don't know what's going to happen after 2 years of being a vegan. But it was almost like a religious moment. I just like, it was so delicious. And I sat there and I just loved it so much. And then when I went to Korea, I had Korean barbecue every day for lunch. And then I had more steak dinners at night. And it was, it was great. And then after that, I've never looked back. And of course, tried to like nerd even deeper into topics. And I think, Twitter has helped me with that. I think there's a lot of cool people on there that I've connected with and learned a lot from. I still see myself as like a novice there in that community of people. So it's that's where my health journey has come from. So
I think the moment that you had with the tomatoes is very interesting. Not many people have like okay, this is when it happens, but seeing something that stark might actually be enough where you're like, wait, what even is that? And then you look into pesticides and you realize that glyphosate and all these things and atrazine are just literally killing us. So that's pretty fascinating. I'm on a similar wave. I don't buy any produce myself unless it's organic. It's more money, but how much are you going to pay for your health,
Exactly.
And the other funny thing I think is I can see you like taking the bite of that steak that first night and like the sun shining, like a golden glow, sort of like,
It was literally like
that's
that.
funny, man.
Yeah. That's what it felt
That's
like.
great. So you went 2 full years.
Yep. 2 years, maybe 1 year and 10 months but a lot around 2 years. Yeah. Around there.
Yeah. That's crazy. I don't have that perspective. It's funny. One of my best friends and I, we were going to do a green, plant-based for like, I think there was some movie that came out like called Game Changers or something on Netflix. And me and him, he's a baseball player as well. We're always looking for that next edge. So I'm like, let's try it. We're like, let's do a month. And then the week that we were going to start it came, you're like, okay, let's just do a week. And then the day before we're like, okay, do you just want to try one day first? And I can't, I'm not lying to you. Ian Seymour, he was already on this podcast. The day came and me and him looked at each other. We're like, I'm eating ground beef, dude. So I didn't even get a full day.
Yeah. That's
interesting. Many such cases, I think it's another hindsight thing, but it starts with intention. I saw somebody tweet about like not judging people that are vegan or vegetarian because at least they're being intentional about what they eat. It's better than just consuming the slop that most people eat on a regular basis, just blindly. So maybe that's what you needed to be able to, there's other options than the normal diet. So I'm going to try this. Yeah.
And in hindsight, I'm happy that I did it because it makes me really feel the difference now that I'm eating much more appropriately for me. And I've gained, I'm really bad in pounds, even though I lived 5 years in the US, but I've gained like 20 kilos, which is over 40 pounds in muscle since I stopped being vegan. So I've, if you saw a before and after picture, you wouldn't almost believe it. Maybe I should post that on Twitter. Actually, that would be fun.
Yeah, that'd be. I was about to ask, like, if you had like a picture, because you put up videos on Instagram, you're lifting some serious weight nowadays.
Yeah, and I always, I was a tennis player, so I was athletic, but I was always very skinny. And I think, if someone even asked someone in my college tennis team, they would never have said, yeah, he was not muscular at all, So. Yeah, I should probably make a post about that. See the difference because it's massive, and I always had this like limited belief that I'm just not strong. I can't build muscle, like that. And I think going on this journey for me has been a lot about just learning that I can. I love the feeling of like feeling strong and being able to move a lot of weight and to do that, but it's also weird at the same time because inside sometimes I can still feel skinny, and my girlfriend thinks I'm so ridiculous when I'm like, like not that I'm not like crying about it, but I'm just saying like I don't feel that big, but then if I'm like standing next to someone in the gym, I'm like, he looks big, but like I'm bigger, it's just situations like that. So
Very interesting. No, I think it's all about perspective, dude. And that's what's brought you here. So, it is what it is. I think the lifting weight comment, I don't know who put this out, but basically the idea of like, there's few more real truths in the world than physical exertion or like working out, because the reality is whatever weight's on the bar, you can either lift it up or you can't. It's like either you have the strength and the capability to do this or you don't. So how are you going to get to that? And I think that's like one of the greatest, like, what's the word? It's like overarching idea.
Yeah, of life. It's like a rite of passage too, I think. And I think like even like if I'm doing a deadlift, again, I don't know pounds, but let's say I'm just doing a deadlift of like 200 kilo, and that's, makes my blood burn. And then that makes me feel like I can achieve anything outside of the gym as well. Like I feel unstoppable after doing that. So I think all of that thing is, it's very connected to each other. And I think the physical and the mental gets overlooked, like that connection a lot. I think you need to get active to be able to have a good mental state and to be able to achieve things, whether that's business or family or whatever.
Entirely agree. Yeah. And I also agree with the weights. It's you put up one of those personal record weight lifts and you're like on top of the world, and then you dissect that and you're like, oh wait, why can't I translate this process that I use to this part of my life?
Right.
Very fascinating. And then you mentioned Twitter. I saw a tweet from you one time that kind of hurt me a little bit. You said flip-flops are terrible for you or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Dude, you want to, I got a pair of beloved flip-flops. You want to break that down?
Yeah. So a lot of people think that they have these like narrow foot prisons that we were talking about, right? And I will also say to anyone listening that I'm not a physiotherapist. I just learned what the other guys in my team is talking about. So if I say something that is slightly, or if I use a term that's slightly inaccurate, don't judge me. But if you walk barefoot on the grass, for example, that feels nice because you're walking smoothly and everything. But if you put on a flip-flop, you think that it would be good, right? Because it's very open. Okay, you're not putting your foot down. Nothing is pressing you from the sides or anything. But when you move the flip-flop from one step to the next, you have to keep it on your foot. Which means that naturally a lot of people will have that string between their big toe and their second toe, and they will push that together to grip the flip-flop to stay on your foot. So which means that you're pushing your big toe into a unnatural position by just doing that. And it's called a grip reflex, right, instead of a walking reflex. So it's really two different things. And that's why I said that the flip-flops are actually not optimal for your feet, because you're kind of training yourself to not walk as an optimal step should look like. And because your foot should be relaxed and it should like move smoothly, and
that hurts, man. I might have to go buy some different like shoe options today, because I wear flip-flops a lot of places. But it makes sense because so normally I'm trying to like put my big foot down this way almost, but then when you're doing that, you're like bringing it in. It makes a lot of sense intuitively.
Yeah, that's why like a sandal where you tie it around the ankle is much better, because then you can actually relax in the front and the toes and everything. So there are a few options like that they kind of look similar to a flip-flop. It's just a different thing.
What are your thoughts on grounding shoes?
So I actually have a pair grounding sandals. I don't know how well they work grounding wise. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I think the the mission behind it is great to get more time grounded. It's not part of our mission to do that, at least not for now. I think our mission is a little bit different. If we'll make it in the future, maybe, if we can see that it really works the way it should. But it's a cool idea. I think if you can prove that it really works. I mean, I don't know. Is it like 5% of normal grounding? Is it 50?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I like the idea if it works. If not, at least they look cool. So
yeah. Do you have a voltometer, right? I saw you did one post on
yes,
on grounding.
it actually broke, so I haven't been able to test it, my grounding sandals after that. So but I ordered a new one, so I'll have to test it.
I thought that was a great post, and just it's so simple. Like it just shows you right there. It's like there's literally a charge. It's just that simple.
So simple, and I think that's kind of like the problem with grounding, and it's a problem with a lot of things that are free and accessible to people, like sleep and sunlight and walking, swimming in the ocean, whatever it is. I mean, they're all free, and they're almost so simple that people get skeptical. That like, how good can it be, right? So. Because everybody thinks that, you know, it has to be like an expensive supplement or an expensive gadget or that's going to take them to the next level of health. But sometimes it's just get back to the basics, you know, go outside, be barefoot a little bit in the grass, swim in the ocean, get some sunlight, get those basics first and sleep, you know.
There's not to bring Hitler into this, which is it's an interesting way to start a point, but he's a master manipulator. He's one of the most prolific manipulators in human history, and he has a quote about how people are more likely to believe a big lie than a little lie, because we ourselves feel we are way more capable of little lies than big lies. So, for example, somebody's way more likely to think they have to spend money on X, Y, and Z than the little lie of going to get grounded. They're like, oh, that can't be true. Like, because that's too small. So they'll believe this huge corporate lie that you have to wear these shoes and you have to do this, this, and this. That's perhaps a little bit of an odd correlation between Hitler and shoes for grounding.
Yeah, but it makes sense. And I think, even me, like I was skeptical. That's why I bought the voltmeter, because I was like, I have to see that it actually works on myself. That makes it more powerful to me. And then, the video was kind of cool, and that went pretty viral. So I think it's good to spread some awareness that way. But again, I understand that it's a little bit weird for people, like grounding, sure, like electrons entering the body that way seems a little weird, right? But obviously it works, and I think I feel great doing it. So
yeah, and that post with the voltometer is one of those ways for people to be like, oh wait, there is something here, and something that also, I don't know what the EMF reader is, what the actual meter is called.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I've seen that a lot with people that are like skeptical of EMF emission from your phone or your
AirPods,
Wi-Fi, or your even AirPods.
Yeah.
And then somebody will post a video with that, and they're like, oh wait, it's actually something. So perhaps that's one of the benefits of Twitter and social media and people putting those things out. It's that awareness.
Yeah, I think so. And I think sometimes, have you heard of the butterfly effect? So like how if a butterfly is flying in the middle of the ocean, they can, do a little flying with their wings, and then that'll start like a little wind thing that'll sometimes turn into a tornado, and it'll do a lot of damage, or create a cloud that starts raining somewhere or something. And I think it's a little bit same with Twitter. Like sometimes you can put out a little thought somewhere, and it sparks a thought at someone else, and then maybe someone else sees it, and before you know it, there's a million people that have seen it. So and then that, who knows what kind of ripple effect that'll have. So I think it's just fun to put out some small thoughts sometimes, see what catches on.
The thread of yours that caught me was the one on toxins in your environment.
Yeah.
I thought that was awesome. And that's also something that people aren't aware of. And you really just did a good job of articulating that and really delineating each one.
Yeah.
And I think that's a prime example. I don't know if that one went viral.
Those two are the posts that I've done well. Like I think that one got like 300,000 views, and the grounding one got like 580,000 views or something. You know, so it's those two went kind of bonkers on my level. So
yeah, I mean that's a lot of people. That's very cool.
Yeah.
And then I really just got one more question, man. So you just put it up recently, the Svard games.
Yeah.
What do we?
Me and my brother, this was seven years ago. We were saying, you know, when people getting to their 20s, their early 30s, it's very easy to slip away from people, and you know, to not, maybe it can go 3-4 years before you see a friend, and then you know someone moves away, they get kids, and then you see each other once every decade. So we were saying, like, why don't we just create a tradition where we gather all our friends one time a year, same weekend every single year, where we just have fun. We do like games, and we do a competition with it. And at the end of every weekend, there's a winner, and you get engraved into the trophy, and people get like pumped, and you know, so. And we've done it for 6 years, and I think it's one of probably my favorite weekend of the whole year. We just, you know, gather everyone here. Everybody stays. We have a bunch of beds here at the summer house, so we can keep like 20 people here. So it's nice, and we just do games during the day, and we do some, you know, grilling and jacuzzi and sauna and ocean swim at night, and then people are up until like 2-3 a.m. just talking memories, and then we do it again next year. And it's an easy way to just connect. And then like two of the members have gotten kids since this started, so now they're bringing the kids, and in a couple of years we'll probably have like a kids edition and a kids trophy, and our goal is for this to like go on for the next 50 years. So it would be fun if that's realized.
Of all the things that we've talked about, I think that's my favorite, man. I think that's such a cool thing. I really do. And I'm so like, it's got the wheels spinning in my head of like, what can I do? How can I create something like that? Because though in the end, dude, if that happens for 50 years, you look back on that 50th anniversary and you think about like this laundry list of memories, events, things that have changed. You've got probably grandkids there, maybe even great grandkids or something. Who knows? I just think that's really, really cool.
Yeah, me and my brother were talking about, we took a walk yesterday here, and we were talking about the goal would be that our kids would like take over this tradition one day, right? And they would start to host it with their friends, and then it would, you know, maybe the other members, grandkids kids are also here, and maybe they're like pointing at the trophy, you know, oh, my dad won in 2021, and then your dad never won, you know, so that would be quite fun. So I think, like, besides business and all this, like, I mean, I love to create meaningful things. Of course, that's why we're doing Wide. But I think at the end of it, it's like family and friends. That's what really matters in the end. And I think it's important to do conscious efforts to keep those relationships healthy and keep those relationships fun. Because I think a lot of people forget to have fun too. Like, it's not all about productivity. It's not all about like chasing things all the time. Sometimes you just gotta like relax and have fun with your friends. And I think that's equally as important as anything, because what's the point of chasing success if you have no one to share it with at the end of it? So you can't sacrifice family and friends to chase something, because you won't be happy anyway. So
it's interesting that that's like the first thing that gets sacrificed a lot of the times as well. Yeah. You can say, oh, my family is the most important thing, that's why I'm doing it. And then the family gets sacrificed. And then it's like, wait, so what are you sacrificing for in the meantime? And frankly, that's something that I appreciate you saying that. It's something that I need to reflect on, because that's a wheel that I get caught in, where it's like, I don't have time to do that. I can't spend money on that right now. I have this, and this to do. And dude, in the end, it's like, what's going to matter more to you? The relationships, the memories that you have with the people that you love, or that one call that you had, or that 1 hour long whatever you had. It's just, I think that's really cool. And like I mentioned, that's my favorite thing that you've talked about so far today. Yeah. There's a quote by a guy named JT Van Sant in America. He's another Texan, and he's actually affiliated with Yeti, but he was talking about the Mexican culture, like the Mexican heritage. And he said, family, hard work, and celebration, everything else is clutter. Yeah. And I think that's like, love that. If I could have a like a piece of wood, a sign at like the front of my door in my house when I'm older. I want it to be that family, hard work, celebration. Everything else is clutter. We don't need much more than that.
I love that. Yeah.
That's a good place to wrap up, man.
Yeah.
I really appreciate your time. This has been an awesome combo.
Same. Appreciate it. Should do it again sometime.
Yep. Yeah. Where can people find you?
Well, I mean, I'm most active on Twitter right now, actually. So maybe Twitter, just my name, and then feel free to follow Wide if you want to see what we're up to at the end of the year. Maybe coming to the US. I think Wide is more active on Instagram, so it's just Wide Footwear, Wide with a Y, and then that's pretty much it.
And then Melker is MELKERSVARD.
Yeah, Melkers Story.
Good deal. Yeah, I mean he's got great content on Twitter. If you're on Twitter, Instagram's also good. I feel it's worth mentioning as well because this is like my third or fourth podcast with somebody I met over social media. I just think that's such a cool.
I agree.
It's like one of the coolest benefits of it. I think it's fascinating.
I agree. I mean, social media gets a lot of hate, but I think I think it's a tool as everything else, and it's about how you use it. And I think one thing that I'm trying to do now is to just build meaningful connections. And I'm happy we got to talk like this, and keep building on our relationship as well. And maybe when I'm in the US next time, I'll come. I will come by Austin anyway, so maybe we can meet up then.
Perfect, man. If I'm ever in Sweden, if I ever find myself out there, I will gladly let you know.
Yeah.